back to the People Podcast. In today's episode, I am joined by Adrian, co-founder and chief helper at Hireful. We spent time unpacking how AI is already reshaping recruitment, how job seeker behavior is changing, and what this means for HR teams and in-house recruiters who are trying to get this right. We also talk about how AI can be used in a way that supports better decision-making, fairness, and trust, rather than replacing the human side of recruitment. If you work in HR, recruitment, or people leadership, this conversation will give you a lot to think about. Hello and welcome to the People Podcast. Today, I am really pleased to be joined by Adrian, the co-founder and chief helper at Hireful. We're also at the start of a really exciting partnership together, so this felt the perfect time for us to sit down and have a proper conversation. So, Adrian, before I get into our topic on our discussion today, do you want to introduce yourself, your role at Hireful, and what are you building there?
Yeah, thank you, Naseer, and thank you for inviting us on the podcast. So my role, we're a 50 staff company, so I'm probably wearing a few hats like lots of the listeners probably do. So part of my role, there's a lot of training. I do a lot of webinars, podcasts, things like that. I've LinkedIn newsletter. And then I'm also very, very much involved in the product side of the business. So, and really thinking about it these days, taking ownership for that AI piece. So for a long time, we knew this is on the horizon for the last 3 years, really. And it was, one person needs to be across it, researching it. So we have, a good understanding and good direction for our product. Interestingly, I think that's probably what a lot of businesses now need. You need at least one champion who's going to be reading everything, perhaps even one champion in each department, realistically. So someone's got to be able to decipher it, work out the sort of signal from the noise and move forward. And that's a large part of my job, which is great because I love researching new areas and playing with technology.
And I think that is an important role at the organization. And I am going to address the elephant in the room here to say AI feels like it's everywhere at the moment. So my question to you is, from what you're seeing in the market today, how do you think it's changing society? More broadly, not just how we work.
Yeah, I'd almost, we'll start with a contradiction. I'll start by having to take a different view, Nasir. I actually don't feel like it is everywhere. Maybe the perception is it's media attention is, I wouldn't even dare say it's everywhere. I mean, we had an election 2 years ago in this country and AI was not a discussion point. In the next elections in 2-3 years, I strongly suspect it will be one of the top 3 issues. So it doesn't feel to me like it's everywhere. When you look at how much our kids, our families, friends all use social media, I have to take myself out of my bubble and talk to them and see how much they're using AI, even outside of this house, because I'm obviously promoting AI out to my kids. And so don't just look it up, I'll show you. But then the average household, I don't think that it's really that prominent. And in the workplace, many HR departments not really doing too much with it. It's just sort of a state of awareness and maybe planning and maybe doing some basic stuff.
And I think that leads really well to my next question to you is, why do you think recruitment in particular seems to be feeling the shift faster than more areas in HR?
Well, there's a lot of admin in recruitment. So I think but then there's other areas. I think, finance departments will be feeling this probably at the same speed of more broadly HR and recruitment departments, but there is a lot of admin in recruitment. And we know there's a poor candidate experience in a lot of areas. I mean, how many more things do you have out there in the world where the organization is selling something, as in a job, and you can read about it, you can, make an effort to purchase it, as in apply for the role, but you can't speak to anyone.
Mm,
It's really
true.
important for the
Yes.
business, but the number of job seekers versus the number of recruiters or HR people available to service them, it just doesn't work. And that's the same reason now, whereby that's where we see the potential for chatbots to come in and deliver a better service. And that's what I think is like maybe the penny drop moments that are going to happen in wider society as well, will be things like the NHS, where the government's putting big effort into that. I'm not trying to turn this into a politics podcast, but at the moment, if you've got an appointment at the hospital, you get a letter, and
Yes.
there's probably some items on that letter you don't understand, medical terminology, or you don't even know what the parking situation's like at the hospital these days. It clearly makes more sense, and this is obviously where the NHS is heading, as they know that they need to save money and they've got an ongoing, a greater need. They have to embrace AI. So,
Yeah.
so I think we'll start to see in wider society AI really supporting us. The one that I'm huge on using voice, and I'll come to that later on. Like, I don't type out many prompts. I use voice all the time. I'm walking along, walking my dog. I think people think I'm on a phone call. I'm talking to AI. Now, I probably am a bit of an outlier, but I was thinking today, where's that voice moment going to come from, where we all start using voice and talking to AI, which seems very, very weird in science fiction. And it seemed to me like the car is the obvious one. How many times we're
Yes.
driving in the car and you think, I need to do something, I need to remind me of that. There's a safety issue around making a note on your phone or whatever. So that will be, there'll be these moments where we all start getting more comfortable and happier with AI. We see the value of it, and then we're letting it into our lives more and more. The more you let it
Mm.
in, the more it can do. Yeah, and everyone will be not
And
without
I
its
think that
issues, but it starts adding real value.
it does definitely. So it's also really interesting to see how candidates are now seeing artificial intelligence as. So, what changes are you already seeing in how people are searching for roles and applying for them?
Yeah, so I mean, we started out in recruitment, 26 years ago. We started doing online advertising about 2005. So that's what, 21 years ago. So what we were helping people do then was helping employers to get their jobs out there so candidates could find their jobs. That game has obviously happened. It's very easy for you to keep a track of, if you're looking for a job in the marketplace, very easy to sort of get the basics of that. I'm looking for this type of job in this sort of area, this sort of location, salary, etc. Um, that's largely done. To be honest, I think it could be a lot better, but it's largely done. The challenge people have got now is that there are lots and lots of jobs. Which ones are the real career opportunities? How do
Correct.
I, help me apply for these jobs? And what's obviously happening in the world we live in today, like even the pre-AI world, is that there's hundreds of applications for each job. So
Mm,
candidates, in order to get a job, are having to be rejected dozens and dozens of time. And I think they feel the technology, because it's much easier to externally attribute that. So they feel that, why didn't I get that job? Because the ATS rejected me, or
mm,
the AI rejected them. If you've been rejected for a job in the last 12 months, it's very, very, very unlikely that the AI rejected you. It would have been a human, almost definitely a human, pushing the actual decision on that, unfortunately.
probably, and then I think that's again that question when you try to answer, and I have seen organizations actually put that into their uh, ads or adverts to say this application is not going to be uh, shortlisted via AI, or is it going to be shortlisted via AI? They're actually putting a disclaimer. Some of them I have seen them, so it's quite interesting to see that. Uh, so when it comes to CVs or applications and to prepare for interviews, how much influence do you think AI already has on jobs?
I think it's almost like it's going at the same speed for both sides of the equation. So I see a lot of recruiters that are using AI, but they're using it on the fairly basic level, which is fine, and HR people to help them draft adverts, to help them write emails, to help them write letters, and that's great. They're using it, and it's a nice, safe area to use it in. On the job seeker side, I'm sure, the days of drafting a CV and writing it all from scratch, I suspect most candidates won't do that coming forward. And it's obviously quite easy to tailor your CV for a given role. I think the concern you have is that it's so easy to tailor the CV, and maybe even the AI wants to help you, that the potential for it to exaggerate your experience, probably realistically, we're not dealing with like fabrication, fraud. I think that's less of an issue. But obviously, if you are interested in putting a fraudulent application in, AI is going to be an excellent tool to use. But it's more about the exaggeration factor. And that then leans onto onto the recruiter's side. The tools to get around that are either sort of really strong background checking, or more likely good old fashioned probing interviews where you can sort of dig in, and you sort of, you've probably been there and you've asked a series of questions, and where someone was leading a project, all of a sudden it's now they were part of a project, and and it sort of unravels a little bit. It's not quite as big as the claims they made.
And I think that is really important, that even the employers needs to be very careful and also really go through that application. I think relying on artificial intelligence is good. Well, I'm not saying it's a tool, a good tool to use, but it needs to be careful. So again, if we look ahead, or if we say 2026, it's weird to say ahead for 2026. January is almost done. So I'm still going to say ahead, because technology is evolving at the speed which I don't think we can catch up to. How do you see candidate behavior evolving as these tools are becoming more normal?
Yeah, so we're going to see more applications. I think when we looked at the landscape of all the things we could do with our applicant tracking software, the first thing we did was actually we looked at AI shortlisting, which is a simple, well, it's a well-designed but really important solution. The recruiter sets out 3 questions to sort of help them to screen the CVs. The AI gets the questions from the recruiter, an anonymized version of the CV, and it works out whether the person meets the criteria or meets some of the criteria. So it's not like a binary thing, and there's a scoring system behind it. So we saw more applications. We don't necessarily feel like the tidal wave of that has started to land yet. We see it increasing. Obviously, we have 600 customers. We can see the average number of applications per job increasing, and there's other market research out there that supports that. But actually, that's because, probably like my original point, I don't feel like AI has truly landed yet. It will land when it becomes an agent that would monitor the market for you,
Yes.
and will alert you when there's a good job that meets all of your criteria. Because at the moment, if you're talking to a friend about a job and you said, "Oh, what are you looking for?" The answer would sound something like, "Well, I work hybrid at the moment, so I'd only want to work 2 days a week in the office. I wouldn't want to commute more than 45 minutes. I'd want to do this job. I'm planning to retire in 10 years, so the pension would have to be really," it's quite a nuanced thing when you get into it.
It is.
You can't do that with a job board. You can do that with an AI agent that would go and do the research, ask a series of questions. Well, it can do that to a degree if the company is exposing enough of their information on their career site and other things. So that's how I see it sort of changing in the future, is that once we get to that agent level, and it will be something along the lines of, you're filling in a job application form on your browser, and your browser will be upgraded to an AI browser. And a bit like when you fill out your credit card details and it says, "Would you like me to do this for you?" Most of us will say yes. And then, you might, when you're doing a job search, say, "Would you like me to keep a track of this for you?" And then it might ask you, "Is there anything else you'd want me to verify before I pass relevant jobs to you?" And you might say, "Well, yeah, can you check them out on Glassdoor?" So in quick succession, you'll be able to, we'll start to sort of lean into it. At the moment, I feel like a small percentage of people are playing with it, but that will change. Maybe not 2026 for the majority, but 2027 onwards, I can see it really changing. And it's going to mean a lot more applications, hopefully a lot more applications as well, though, that people have qualified that they're genuinely interested.
And I think that obviously puts a lot of pressure on employers now,
Yeah.
that you've got this pool of talent who really specifically is looking for a specific role that fits them more than what's advertised. So, what new challenges does this create for HR teams and in house recruiters?
So more applications. You've got assessment challenges, and also there's a challenge around. I actually think you might want to rethink the skills you're recruiting for. So if I sort of go through them in sort of order, so more applications. I think this is really interesting. What I was just suggesting there was that the sort of job seeker is sort of AI powered. The agent's involved, and
Yeah.
the agent is probably making the application in due course. You know, filling out the form and submitting it to that role. So then you've got like sort of agent to recruiter relationship there. But as we see it moving forward, and we've already got customers asking us for this, and we're already in the process of building this, we see that that first step that we know what happens at the moment. You get a good CV, or in some cases, depending on the role. There was a company I spoke to the other day in catering, and they're looking for people just to work in kitchens and maybe be trainee chefs.
Mm.
So there isn't a lot of skills they're looking for. So they're having to speak to lots and lots of candidates, but they quickly work out that they can't do the shift. They didn't realize the salary, they didn't realize this. So, like in the first 4 or 5 questions, half the applicants just disappear. That's where, as I see it, like once again, maybe I said at the start, the agent will make the application. It could be that lands in the recruitment system. Maybe a recruiter looks at it and says, yeah, this person's interesting. And then maybe they send their agent out to talk to the candidate to say, you look like you're a good fit for this role. I've got 4 or 5 questions to ask you. Then I can get you in front of one of our human recruiters over here. Is now a good time? I think that's a good experience for all, and just clarifying things out. Yeah. And they go, oh, no, I didn't realize the role was based all the way over there. I wouldn't be able to get to that
Mm.
role. Okay, no harm, no foul. Let's see if there's a better role for you somewhere else. So I see this happen. What's really interesting to me, if I'm not going too mad on this, Dave, I think in the future you might have agents and agents talking. So think about that, where like it finds a job. Now this might sound a bit bizarre for some of your listeners, perhaps, but it's not hard to imagine that you have ChatGPT or similar. You set it up on a job search. It looks for the job. Then you've given it a set of requirements. It must have good culture, must have this, must be able to let me have every Friday off or something, or work from home on a Friday. And then that agent might have to go talk. At the moment, you might have an external chatbot on a career site, but it might actually just go into like almost the back end and ask a series of questions, look through the data that's available on the website, and find the answer to its question and say, yes, I'm pretty sure that they have hybrid working. I've read their hybrid working policy. So it brings it back to you. So it's almost like the agents are working amongst themselves
Mm.
and then
Interesting.
bringing
Yeah.
back real opportunities. And that agent to agent world will be one that we see in a lot of our working and personal relationships, perhaps.
And that is a question which now it comes to my mind is, now organizations are more at risk. What do you think? Where do you think that the organizations now are at a risk of getting this wrong?
Yeah, so I put this down as when I was thinking about it earlier, it was like leaders and laggards. That's what I see at the moment. I think that the problem that you've got is, I think, yeah, there is the chance that some people go too fast and don't put the
Yes.
right guardrails in place. And I'm sure there's lots of, particularly if you're a larger organization, there'll be lots of journalists ready to write a story about, oh, you wouldn't believe that, the AI screened applicants in a discriminatory way, and obviously there's monetary risks on that as well. So yeah, we know there's a risk there, but I think you've also got to recognize sometimes, but by not doing anything, that also itself is a risk. And I think
Yes.
there'll be many more organizations who, I don't have a problem with organizations moving slow. Obviously, you can tell I'm quite an AI enthusiast, but I'm realistic. And obviously really want to work with customers and bring them along at their speed. But I'm also aware that it'll be the, putting your head in the sand type approach. And some people will be just
Yes.
saying, this is not for us. Not this year. Maybe next year we'll look at it. Not this year. Maybe next year. And let's take one example of that. Imagine you've got your um, recruiter there and they've got 100 CVs, and lo and behold, they work from home half the week. So nobody really knows what they're doing totally. You're sort of measured more on your output these days. You know, what have you done today? Oh, I can see you've screened 400 applicants. Did you? Or did you download them and put them into ChatGPT, which you actually can't do that at the moment, but some of Claude's new tools, ChatGPT, you can only upload 10 CVs. Yeah, obviously it's probably a breach of GDPR if you're doing that, so don't do that if anyone's listening. But what I'm saying is you get this rogue AI usage by not giving people tools, not giving them instructions and policies and training. Then people will just go, well, why am I doing it like this when I know I can do it with AI? Maybe the last company gave them tools and software. They moved to you, they got nothing. So they'll go, well, I'll find a solution. And maybe you might even maybe let the CV screening go on and they'll go take the dog for a walk while you think they're working. So there is some definite challenges with, I mean, my view is it's landing, it's here. You know, if it isn't, let's have a policy, let's have a process for it, let's get our heads around it. And I think that's important as an organization, but it's also important as individuals as well.
I spoke about this quite briefly in my last episode about talent acquisition, and I spoke about how organizations should move from reaction to more intentional recruitment. So, what opportunities do you think artificial intelligence is used intentionally rather than reactively?
Yeah, well, I mean, what I would say is it's the first thing that happens, I think, is if you are intentional about your AI, you get your head around it. You end up with a state. You start probably with thinking around, well, how does this affect our organization? What is our position on AI? You know, Amazon would have a very probably, I'm assuming, much more cutthroat position on AI usage than perhaps a charity might, for example. And that doesn't mean that the charity doesn't want to be as efficient as possible, deliver as, you know, put as much of their resources into frontline services and other things such as this. So they're all challenged to do more with AI if it can add real value. But I think the first thing is to have that policy, that standpoint, and then be open to that. Because I think what happens then is you can confidently talk about it. And I think the thing that we don't hear a lot is that I feel there's a real benefit in getting your ducks in a row, being really clear about where you sit with AI. For our organization, that means we're an AI positive company. You know, that's the broad label we would put on it. And it means that if people want to gain AI skills, we're a great organization to work with. And I think a lot of, you know, people that are, you know, not looking to retire in the next 3 years, all of us are going to need AI skills. So yeah, broadly speaking, I think that's where it's at. And then if you're getting into the nuts and bolts of it, it's, you know, there's a whole series of steps you can walk through that I talk to people about how to identify the, you know, the safest, easiest to land, highest value opportunities within each given department. You know, and that's where you want to start with the easy, high impact, low risk wins. And normally in recruitment, actually, that's actually CV shortlisting. Yes. If it's done in a bias, I'm not going to say bias free because there's always potential for some bias, but in a way that's really minimizing the bias, and it's a well thought out way.
And also, I think we answer that question when people think, is AI going to replace my job? You know, I get asked that question at the admin level or above. So we say, no, instead of you thinking that way, why don't you reskill yourself? And you always need to learn about it, that there is this tool which is going to be really helpful. Why don't you, reskill and then get yourself to that level? So if you are given that opportunity to advise a recruitment team right now, what would they actually be doing differently? How would you advise them?
Yeah, so the future stuff's really interesting. I love reading about it. Generally speaking, I try not to talk about anything beyond 12 months because I think I'm completely making it up as I go along. if I'm doing that, I'm getting right. I was listening to some of the interviews. The Anthropic company who make Claude, their CEO, so one of the largest AI companies in the world. Their CEO was talking at the Davos summit just last week or 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about in 2 or 3 years that software developers won't be writing a single line of code. Now, he probably knew when he said that he was giving out the headline. It probably won't be like that, but it's a good indication of where we're going. Software development is the one area where AI usage has been, it's a couple of years ahead of everywhere else. It's a really interesting place to look at. So what you could think there is you could think, well, there's a lot less software developers. And that's possibly the case. I don't know, but possibly. But what you end up with is you still need technical people to deliver and coordinate. It's like I don't know, the person who's mastering the orchestra. Like I forget the name of the person, but the conductor. He or she is there, like doing that job, but just coordinating more than just playing their own instrument. So that means there's an abundant. You can build a lot more software. You can solve a lot more problems. Maybe there's some problems that you couldn't have afforded to do. Now you can build software cheaper. Now you can go solve that problem as well. So there's a lot. You end up with like the software industry could become much, much bigger. Maybe employ less people. Maybe employ the same amount. I can see similar things happening with recruitment, that you'll be able to do far more, because most people's jobs now in recruitment, employer brand, candidate experience, quality, diversity, and inclusion. These are things that people are struggling to pick up. So I see them now. Quite possibly, it'd be like one person that would be managing a lot of that, or maybe a smaller team. But you're managing across a lot of areas, and it's your probably individual agents that are going and building, preparing, writing something for you. You're reading, editing, and approving it. I think that's probably the likely initial relationship we'll have with AI. Is they're doing a lot of work. We're coordinating what they do, bringing it back, and then we're achieving a lot bigger production. But then you say, what happens 5 years' time when they can do the coordinations? And that is a bit more worrisome.
It is, and I think, and that's a question which normally comes in, isn't it? We hear the phrase human-led, AI supported a lot. So what does that really look like in practice?
Well, I think that's where we're going to be with a lot of. I think recruitment mirrors a lot of other processes. If you think about it from like an insurance capacity, from a risk management, there's going to be, whilst the whole world gets comfortable with AI to a greater or lesser degree, depending on each organization, we're going to want those checks and balances in place for a bunch of reasons. One, to just check on bias. Two, it sounds silly, but to keep people employed. If you're the government, it makes sense that you say, right, so I don't know, like mortgage advisors. Well, yeah, the AI can prepare it, but we need a human to read it over and approve it, because you might want to think, we don't want AI coming in and literally just, making everyone in a certain industry redundant. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why you would want to go slower beyond simply the normal things we think about, like around, well, this just feels safer and more secure. But absolutely, it does feel safer and more secure. And also at the moment, most organizations don't have a really good data set. So the human has the knowledge in their head. Like I said, if I said I can build your chatbot, I could probably build your chatbot. Well, my colleagues could this afternoon. Put it on you had a career site, put it on your career site. It would be friendly, it would answer lots of questions, but it would only be able to answer questions based on the content on your career site. If all that information is trapped in your head, then, and that we haven't, found a way of extrapolating that into a written format that an AI chatbot could use, then guess what? The candidates are going to need to speak to you. And that's just one example, but there's so much information that's, that organizations haven't got documented. There's no way of letting AI in if you can't make the AI intelligent enough to make the right decisions, in which case it still stays with humans.
Really important one is it's what you feed in is what's going to come out. I think that's something which people really think, and then that clarity. So with that in mind, how do you think AI can be used to improve fairness and consistency without damaging the trust with the candidates?
Yeah, well, the good news is the relationship with candidates, broadly speaking, is pretty poor. You know, if you said, I need to, I keep using examples that are not recruitment, but it's the same. If you're interested in a house, you know, it's never a fun experience to phone up an estate agent, isn't it? Because they're going to ask you loads of questions about your house, whether you're selling, and they go straight into sales mode. Typically, people just want the art. They just want to know certain things about the house they saw. No, so that's a bad experience we have with estate agents. I think many of us would prefer to talk to AI about a house that's been listed. With recruiters, they can't get to speak to anyone, so they just love to speak to. I presume if AI can come in and speak to them and answer a myriad of different questions, regardless what. And also, I think this is really key as well. If the AI says, and I think this is how we would build our chatbots in the future going forward, is anonymous. So
Mm.
the only information that's fed back to the organization about the questions asked would be the questions the chatbot couldn't answer. So in which case, then, if people are asking, if they're interested in a role and they apply and they're going through the process or whatever stage of the process, and they ask about paternity, maternity leave,
Mm.
they ask about anything. They can ask.
Important.
Some candidates feel embarrassed about asking more than 2 questions, but you can just ask 100 questions if you are a detail-oriented person. So I can see it massively improving, and because it's able to offer more. And I think we'll see that once again as more people have good experiences with AI,
Yes.
then they'll lean into it. And I did one the other day, and I was writing a review on a website for a piece of software, and it gave me 3 options. 1, fill out a form for this review. 2, fill out a voice form, so I'd be able to just,
Okay.
I'd see the question and be able to answer it. And then the third option was have a conversation with a voice agent. You can probably guess which one I chose. Each of those options was signaled with, this will take you 15 minutes, this will take you 8
Right.
minutes, this will take you 5 minutes. And I can see that with candidates. It would say, do you want to speak to one of our recruiters? We'll schedule you in, and you look at it and if you have to wait 2 days, or you can speak to the AI agent here and now at 11 o'clock at night.
Well, that's going to be easy. Uh, and I think you've touched something. I've said you don't advise people more than 12 months. So, but we still need to keep in mind the speed at which technology in general is evolving. So, if we fast forward a few years, how different do you think recruitment will actually be, or
Yeah.
actually feel, or actually, yeah. What do you think it's going to change in?
Well, just quickly speaking about speed, one of the things we worry about here as well is being too early when we build something.
Mm.
So if we built a service and it was all voice, then I think we'd probably be too early. You know, we need the rest of the wider general public to catch up. But dealing with where we'd be in a few years, I just think recruitment, if we know what's going to, if it's, I think we can see what's going to happen in regards to how candidates will interact. It's how quickly candidates will start using agents,
Mm.
and
Yes.
then how quickly. I also feel like there's a really interesting thing that we've got challenges around assessments. So I think assessments are going to have to dramatically change.
Yes, they should.
Um, and then the 2 things I'd say, the skills you're looking for are going to have to change. So if I was going to be hired for a recruitment manager job, even inside of 12 months, I would walk in and I would be sat there and go, I can build you an employer brand AI powered career site with my agents inside of 30 days. My first 30 days, you know, that question, what would your first 30 days look like?
Well,
I'd say, well, based on what you've told me are your big challenges, this is what I will be doing, and I'll be able to achieve all of this. And if you go like, I'm an AI powered candidate with agents that I've already got a relationship with, as in I know how they work. I've maybe trained them on, this is how I want you to build a career site. This is how I want you to build a chatbot for me. This is how I want you to go out and interview all the managers so we can get a really good data set for the chatbot. So, you know, if I've got that, you end up sort of hiring someone, them plus their agents. That's what I see a
that's
few
what.
years down the line, which is almost feels like a gig economy anyway. Then it almost feels like every person's their own. Well, not every person, but in that scenario, that person's probably their own commercial entity. You're sort of, you know,
It's
you're
a
hiring them for the
portfolio now.
output.
It acts as the portfolio in the AI world. So, like I touched a bit earlier, I said about reskilling of HR professionals. So, keeping this particular tool in mind, what skills or mindsets do you think the HR professionals or the recruitment professionals need to stay relevant?
Yeah, so I see it as like I'm as a sort of hierarchy. So you can't just jump in and start building agents.
Mm.
Um, you need to get comfortable with it. But I think the analogy would be if you're in a bank and they're rolling out computers in your division, you've got a choice to like be part of that rollout, or you can stay, with the manual filing, and we'll get back to you in a few years or something. You'd imagine most people career-minded would like, "No, no, no, get me onto the computer plan," and they'll be giving you a book probably, and they'll send you on training courses showing you how to use the computer. That's where we are, but probably even, with a even bigger impact, potentially AI, than the computerization of society. So what I'm telling everyone is, start using it in simple ways. Start using it in your personal life. So think
Yes.
about, oh, I need to get a restaurant. Stop Googling. Google if you have to, um, but the more you start using it, the more comfortable you be. Sign up to at least one newsletter so you're aware of what's going on in your industry. You start becoming comfortable with the terminology. So then conversations that are happening, you're more comfortable saying, "Oh, yeah, I read about that," or "Can you explain why is this LLM better than this other LLM?" And you're able to ask
True.
that question because now you understand what an LLM is.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that little bit of entry knowledge, it stops you getting to the next level. It excludes you from conversations. It probably stops you from opportunities in your organization as well, because they might be
Correct.
looking for these
Yes.
AI champions.
A lot of organizations are asking that question as to say, uh, because I think AI now is somehow entered into the HR market, whether it's on systems or on recruitment. So I think that is one question which quite a few organizations I have seen ask that question is, what is your capability on AI? So if in your view, what do you think is a genuinely AI positive employer look like?
Yeah, I mean, they've done the communication part, so they've done the work to understand, where they sit with AI. They've explained it to their staff. They've built policies. They've got a training program in place, and they probably, the first thing they're going to do is look at where can we be more efficient. Yeah, that's the obvious place to look at. But then the next opportunity, and I think this is where the real creativity comes in as well. This is absolutely where you need the humans, the
Mm,
really smart, intelligent humans. And I was going to mention earlier, like, we have to change up the skills we're looking for. You no longer necessarily need someone, let's say from a HR perspective, to be able to cite employment law, because you can look that up. You need someone who can
yes.
understand it, but the AI will give you multiple opportunities. So if you say, like, where's the opportunities that we can grow as an organization or train our staff better, it will give you a whole bunch of, here's a bunch of scenarios and, things I've researched. It's you what That's where the human comes in, that critical decision making, to go, actually, this is the one that will land really well with us in our market, with our opportunities we've got. This is the one we should be pushing forward on now. So yeah, that's the next, is where you go beyond just making things more efficient, and you start changing the nature of your organization in regards to what it does, because now AI is here and it opens up the ability for you to go in and provide new offerings or enhance what you already do, or provide it to a bigger market, or whatever that could be. Obviously, like, internationalization would be an obvious one as well, because language is going to be less of a factor. You could probably, rewrite your manuals and everything's that much easier potentially.
So to wrap things up, Adrian, if listeners just if they'd like to take one thing away from our conversation today, what should that be, and what should they start doing now?
Yeah, I tell my kids sort of, and we have a joke here about, like, getting outside your comfort zone. And when they say, "Oh, I don't want to do that," you say, "Oh, you're sat right in the middle of that comfort zone, aren't you?" So clearly, you've got to get comfortable with being a bit uncomfortable. So that, because this is
Yes.
all new, and you don't label yourself and say, "Well, I'm not a technical person. I'm not a so and so person." That's like the worst thing you can do. And also, don't think, "Oh, that person on the podcast is an expert, or she's an expert.
Mhm.
There's very few genuine experts out, and in
Out
this
there.
field. Everyone is just like scrambling, learning. So, firstly, get your mindset right, and then secondly, it would be, try and think of ways to build it into your everyday. So start thinking about And the best thing ever is just start asking questions and questions and questions into AI.
Yes.
Because like even that, how do I build AI into my everyday life? Do you know who the best answer for that question is? AI. So just keep asking all those questions into AI because you know where you want to get. AI will help you get there. It might give you the odd silly answer and stuff, but then that's down to your own understanding and perception. You'll work that through.
And I think that is so important to highlight is, as I said before, is you need to train AI. It's not the first thing when I'm going to log on and say, today is going to be my first day. I'm going to make an account. I'm going to ask these questions and I'm going to get all the answers. It's going to just think about it for a while and say, no, it's going to give you that generic answer. But the more you speak to it, the more you enter information into it, I think that's where it becomes very, very helpful. So I really do love how practical and your human view on AI is, and specifically in the recruitment field. So that is exactly why I am so excited to be partnering with Hireful. So Adrian, thank you very much to give your time today for this podcast. I do really appreciate you taking time and sharing your perspective today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Naseer. It's lovely. Lovely. It's my favorite subject. So thank you for having me on board.
We're definitely going to be coming back for it. Thank you. That brings us to the end of today's episode. A big thank you again to Adrian for sharing his insights and experience. And I'm genuinely excited about the partnership with Hireful. AI in recruitment isn't about replacing people. It's about supporting what's better, more consistent, and fairer hiring decisions when it's used with intention. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow or subscribe to the People Podcast for more conversations on people, culture, and the future of work. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.